Of a modern human male. He appears to be encountering some difficulty. He seems to be in a state of disorientation, befuddled by his environment. Our subject is at his wit's end, but then he makes a discovery.
Life isn't 2D, so don't listen in 2D. Get the HyperX Cloud Orbit featuring Odyssey planar magnetic drivers and Waves NX 3D audio technology. Experience ultra-realistic 3D audio and game like you live.
Welcome to the Virtual Industry Pros Summit for Esports, Day 10. This is the final day. What a powerful 10 days it was, from accessibility to careers to data science and more. Today's our last day of the summit, which has reached over 300,000 viewers. No one ever thought we would reach that many people, and then that many folks really care about the future of esports and what that means and how to build a career in that industry. Today, what we're going to do is reflect over the last 10 days. We got a stellar cast today from all different walks of life, from players to program managers to our moderators. It's going to be a really great and engaging conversation. But first of all, a major thank you to all our partners. Microsoft and Games for Change for planning, HyperX for their sponsorship. Please check the link down below to get your discount, and Greenlit for the production. Of course, none of this would be possible without the City of Syracuse and University of Syracuse for bringing it all together. Now, what's also today is the finals for the EGF Esports Tournament. 41 teams played and fought for Rocket League greatness. Definitely check out the finals today, and I'm sure Tyler has a lot to say about that and what's happening. But before we get into that, please, let's roll the special tape that we have that we're really happy to see. So roll the tape, please.
As colleges throughout the United States have moved their classes online and canceled in-person events, student clubs have been faced with the challenge of upholding their missions and keeping their members connected at a distance. Because of this need for a new standard of communication, technology is playing a key role in developing ways for organizations to stay in touch with their members. While a typical solution is online meetings through video conferencing tools, the Electronic Gaming Society has a unique approach to bring students at the Rochester Institute of Technology together during social distancing. The student-run club, with a focus on video games, is orchestrating a campus-wide project to rebuild their university block by block in Minecraft. What started as a small group of club members quickly turned into a project with involvement from over 400 students, alumni, faculty, staff, and family members. In a dedicated creative world, players are meticulously collaborating to create the RIT campus to a 2-to-1 scale, inside and out. To achieve this, our team of moderators organizing the project are using campus maps and building floor plans to create accurate guides that are imported into our Minecraft world as schematics. These guides outline the locations of structures, including walls, doors, and other constructions. We are working on one section of campus at a time, starting a new building each week. After the guides for the buildings are placed, we work together to build from the ground up. Through our club's Discord server, we share ideas as we work, post reference images, and give each other feedback on our progress. Members also collaborate on custom plugins, allowing more features within the server. Throughout the process, we're keeping the RIT community up to date by posting in-game screenshots and videos to our social media accounts, as well as streaming once a week to our Twitch channel. The support from RIT's community has been overwhelmingly positive, quickly gathering attention from official RIT media and local news. This project is more than just a way to pass the time. It has become a virtual gathering place for students to collaborate and potentially host in-person events that may have been canceled or postponed, including the graduation commencement ceremony for the class of 2020. In preparation for this ceremony, builders have begun to decorate the already constructed fieldhouse, where most commencement events take place, to include a stage, chairs, decorations, and a screenshot photo booth. We have even created a custom resource pack to reskin Minecraft's Iron Golem mob to look like the university's president, Dr. David C. Munson. While there's more work to be done, we hope this project continues to build connections between our community members during a time when we are all in need of strong company.
Welcome back. Wasn't that amazing? Thank you so much for making that video. The production quality is out of control there. Absolutely outstanding. Thank you so much. Now, before we jump into this stellar conversation, why don't we do some intros? I'd love to hear a bit more about who you are, what you do, and your role in the last 10 days for the overall esports summit and tournament. So please, starting with Tyler, tell us a bit about yourself and I'll go around.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm Tyler Strode. I'm the founder of the Electronic Gaming Federation, and my role in all of this has been running an esports tournament that's going on right now.
Mm-hmm. And Sarah, how about yourself?
Hey everybody, I'm Sarah Weber. I'm the Director of Employer and Corporate Relations for Syracuse University's School of Information Studies, also known as the iSchool. And I had the great fun and privilege of working with everybody, Microsoft, EGF, and the other folks to be a part of this tournament and the summit as well for our students. So thank you to everybody.
Love it. And Greg.
Thanks, Shaz. I'm Greg Topo. I'm a longtime journalist, mostly covering education. I'm also the author of a book on games and learning called, I think we'll do a little bit of a plug, I hope you don't mind.
Please, plug away.
The Game Believes in You, How Digital Play Can Make Our Kids Smarter. I'm also a journalism professor at Northwestern University in Qatar. And I've been moderating for past couple of days.
Absolutely, one of the vital organs of the whole show.
All right.
Scott, tell us.
Hi, I'm Scott Hushaw. I just finished up my junior year at Syracuse University, and I founded and I'm currently the captain of our Rocket League team who's been participating in the EGF tournament for this past couple weeks.
And then we have Eric, please.
Hello, everybody. Eric Johnson. I work with EGF and work with Tyler, and thrilled that everyone was able to come together and be a part of this for the last few weeks. And looking forward to what is the future for all of us together.
Awesome. Perfect. Great to hear. So let's just start. Let's do a level set with EGF, that tournament. Tyler, tell us the overall, how many teams took part, how many students roughly? Tell us about the game a bit and where we are today.
Yeah, so about a month ago is when the tournament started. We brought 41 Division I teams from across the country, from coast to coast, all to play the game of Rocket League, which, if you're unfamiliar, is basically just had a lot of fun. Scott and his team were a part of it, and we're obviously really thrilled about that. And then over the course of 3 weeks, we had all of those teams put together as part of a group qualifier. From there, 20 teams moved on to our championship bracket. They just play their knockout rounds on Friday and Saturday, kind of like what you do in soccer. And then today we're into the top 8 championship bracket, where we're starting to see some interesting kind of matchups that we weren't really sure where they were going to go. Some of the teams that made it all that way were kind of surprising. So Kentucky just beat Seton Hall about an hour ago, and right now Washington State is playing Tennessee Tech. And then later today we'll see UT Arlington versus Delaware, and then Mizzou versus San Jose State. So it's going to be one of those crazy days where we kind of have some guesses where the top seeds might play out, with Mizzou and Arlington being some of the strongest teams in the country. But you never know. The beautiful game means that basically anybody has a chance at any given time.
Now that level of uncertainty is interesting. Like, obviously, I think this is the first time, for at least for me, trying to help plan an esports summit during the COVID crisis that we're going through. How did that affect you? Did COVID throw you? How did COVID throw you off, or did it? What were the impacts of that on you and how you did and how the team was doing?
It was definitely a transition. Originally, these tournaments were going to be held in different cities around the country as part of our whole mission of trying to bring the experience of esports to folks that may not have experienced something like that before. haven't gone to a tournament or been a part of those in a way that a lot of us have in the past. So when everything started to move to online, we spent a lot of time listening and working with all of our schools to sort of understand, where were their students going to be, how are they communicating with them, what were the challenges that they were facing on campus, besides esports, and how can we make sure that we were kind of managing the intensity of the situation that they had to respond to, while making sure that esports was sort of this consistent presence of a way to take students that were getting ready for spring sports, that were getting ready to, kind of do the things that they normally would, and turn that into an experience that they could appreciate and be a part of. So it was, luckily in esports, a lot of things are run online. So from an operations perspective, it was a fairly simple transition. But the big focus was making sure that we were in constant communication with all the teams, making sure that we were helping, everybody kind of get through it. And I think most important, kind of remembering to bring some compassion to all of it, because everybody's dealing with a lot of difficult moments at this point in time. So really excited to see how it turned out. The teams have been amazing. And now that we're at the end of it, I feel like we can all kind of breathe a sigh of relief that nothing was on fire, or at least too much. We're really excited to see the last couple of games today.
Yeah, no, absolutely, 100%. And speaking of players, Scott, you were representing Syracuse University. How did the whole COVID scenario? I mean, I assume you all weren't playing in the same room. Like, how would it have normally have gone out, and then how did this unfortunate pandemic change your approach?
Normally, it probably would have played out. I definitely would have been. We recently had a esports room put in at Syracuse University with really nice PCs and really nice internet. I definitely would have been utilizing that. Unfortunately, I'm home right now, so I'm using my much lesser PC and much worse internet throughout playing. But yeah, we would have been next to each other doing it, and yeah, it worked out. I really enjoyed the event, and yeah.
How did you build that sense of team if you're not really there? Like, help us. Like, I kind of get it, but for those you're used to, let's say soccer, you go in the locker room, you play that song together, you're cheering with each other. You have to build that level of hype, but then you're not in the same room. So how did you guys manage to do that?
Yeah, I feel like we've gone to Syracuse together for a little bit now, and we've spent time with each other in real life. We know each other. I would consider us all friends. And getting someone, hey, come on, let's get some games in. We got this thing coming up soon. I feel like you build that over time, and just because we're apart right now in COVID-19, it doesn't change the bond that you have. It doesn't change the hype and all the stuff that you've been able to create in the past.
Absolutely. I mean, Greg, I know you've been moderating quite a few panels, and I mean, ideally, I think, Sarah, this would have been in person with thousands of people all around us and almost like a festival. But obviously, we had to adjust and pivot. But Sarah, tell us a bit more about kind of your vision for this overall program, and how did you adapt to COVID, and how did you come up with the idea to kind of bring this all together?
Hey, Chas. Well, working really well with everybody on this team, it was a lot of fun to create summit and experiential learning opportunities around, I should say, in parallel to the actual tournament that was taking place. So in addition to the 10 days of industry experts and thought leaders in the esports industry coming together to talk about a variety of different topics, we also had some students from Syracuse University doing experiential learning opportunities. So really being immersed in the production and the data surrounding these types of tournaments really built a lot of excitement and enthusiasm from Syracuse as part of that. And with, as you said, unfortunately due to COVID, we weren't all able to do these things together in person, but a lot of this being, a tech background, we pivot, we leverage technology, and we move forward to build virtual connections. So I think this really was a cool opportunity to show that you can bring together a lot of different people from all over the country and have a lot of fun and really just be kind of a ray of sunshine in the darker part as we were adjusting to COVID.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. It really came together well. And could you tell us a bit more about the different departments involved in Syracuse University that kind of brought it all together? I think there were different schools, I believe. You can kind of go over them, talk a bit more about their roles in this.
Absolutely. So we had students from the Falk College, the Newhouse School, and the I School all participating in this event or in the experiential learning opportunities. And then certainly the students from the other schools and colleges that were actually a part of the team, like Scott. And then, of course, we're not doing anything alone. So there's a whole bunch of other folks from other departments just providing support and the resources for us to really come together. This was a really neat opportunity to bring so many different facets of Syracuse University together for different initiatives. So our Newhouse School students were doing shoutcasting and player interviews, and then the students from Falk and the I School were doing just some really incredible data analysis and diving into the data that surrounds the esports tournaments and the industries as well. And then last Thursday's summit, they shared some of their findings, and hopefully that'll be a part of the growth and the transformation of esports as data is leveraged by players. And we'll make sure you've got players for next, or data analysts for next year, Scott, and really start to be able to bring these different experiences together.
Absolutely. Fantastic. I mean, great. In terms of experiences, great. Where do you think, what out of you interviewing so many different people, what were some common themes that stuck out to you, and tell us a bit more about your experiences throughout the last 10 days?
Yeah, sure. I actually, to be perfectly honest, I didn't quite know what I was getting involved in here when I said yes. But it's been really fascinating. It's been a real education for me. I always tell people, when they ask me about sort of what it's like to be a journalist, I say it's one of the few jobs where you're paid to get smarter. And that's it's been a really, it's kind of what's happened over the past couple of weeks here with this. It's kind of an understatement to say I've learned a lot. I was thinking about something that somebody once told me when I was researching my book. And this was a games journalist, so somebody steeped in this world, who said something that's kind of stuck with me. He said that video games are this voracious medium. And what he meant by that was that they sort of swallow up every other medium that sort of came before them. They swallow up music and animation and history and physics and comic books and pop culture, you name it. And it's been really interesting reflecting on that, just sort of as I've been doing these sessions, because I guess the thing that I didn't realize was that I think esports in the same way is sort of swallowing up different fields. That is I never thought that I would have like a sociologist on an esports panel. So it's really, you can sort of use esports to sort of access, whether it's sociology or psychology, bioinformatics, data sciences. We had an entire panel on just data science, journalism, education, and on and on and on. It's really been kind of eye-opening for me. So I've really enjoyed it. And I guess that if I had to sort of choose like one theme or one word or one idea for this week that's really stuck with me, and this is something I'd love to kind of hear other people talk about, is the word accessibility. I really, I've thought more about accessibility this week, I think, than ever in my career. This idea that esports, it's kind of it's got accessibility sort of baked in, whether that's, physical accessibility or, economic accessibility, or, and all kinds of kind of ways in to a sport that, you might not, for a kid or a young person who might not ordinarily get the chance to play sports. And that's a really exciting thing to me. And I guess the thing that kind of, the question that I have in my mind is like, is there a way to make this field even more accessible and sort of push for more accessibility? So that's really, to me, kind of the most exciting thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a really powerful theme that you pulled out. Accessibility was a pretty critical, no matter what subject matter we talked about, accessibility kept coming back.
Yeah.
And I guess, Eric, if you can tell us a bit more about kind of your background and your involvement with the whole experience of the last, this tournament. And then I guess if you had a magic wand, how would you like to see tournaments be a bit more accessible, or what advice do you have for other institutions trying to build tournaments and make them more accessible like you have?
Yeah, thanks for asking. Yeah, my background is a lot on the traditional sports side. So I had a lot of experience at ESPN and now been in the esports space for over a year, although we did esport as part of everything we did at ESPN. I think accessibility is the right word. I think empowerment is another word, or enablement are things that I think about. I have a 19-year-old daughter who is in this space, meaning that she's going to school for game design. So this is a career. Her path to pro is going to be not to become a professional gamer, but to become a professional within the gaming world. And so I've definitely had that as an opportunity of something that I'm passionate about. And so by building these online events, and hopefully someday soon we'll be back into place-based, I think is really important. I think working with the universities themselves, in some instances, what we've noticed on some campuses is that the esport communities, the clubs, the intramural clubs are all a little bit still disconnected from the academic departments or the athletic departments. And so I think EGF, one of the things that we are very tasked with doing is trying to bring those all together. Because ultimately, if you have empowerment from the university, listening to understanding what the students themselves want, and then creating a shared relationship and a vision for how to invest to create these communities to be more enabled, as we just talked about, then we think that this is a future opportunity, not only for students when they're going to school, but you're creating alumni bases of the future who give back to the school later, 10 years from now.
100%. I mean, in terms of empowerment and accessibility and kind of esports, to me felt like a way to bring so many different people with different walks of life that you won't really see coming together. Like, you don't need to quote unquote major in math, or you don't need to major in esports programming in order to be involved. I mean, yeah. Scott, I think you're tell us a bit more about your background and your degree.
I'm a biochemistry major. So I'm in the sciences. So my teammates are arts and sciences as well, undecided, and the other one is a math major. He's an engineer. But yeah, my background, I've been playing video games since I was like 3 years old, but I was a 3-sport athlete in high school. I've always been competitive and doing other stuff. I feel like the stigma, you get a little bit around esports, it doesn't always fit. Not everyone fits in that little bubble.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And then how are your teammates? Like, how do you break that bubble? How do you help others understand that? I guess, summits like these help a bit, but in your daily life, like, what approaches do you have for other people at different universities that may just get shot down all the time or get made fun of because they're a part of an esports experience or want to be a part of it?
I mean, if people are going to make fun of you for doing something that you care about and doing something that you're passionate about, I mean, like what's the purpose in having those types of people in your life, in my mind? But
well said, Scott.
But if you find something you care about and something you're passionate about, who really cares what other people think? Just do what you can, do what you love. Other people's opinions don't always matter.
Absolutely, 100%. Sarah, how about you tell us a bit more about the Syracuse University approach in terms of, like, there were a lot of moving parts in terms of pulling this all together on your end. So I guess, what are some of the key things or themes that stood out for you? For Greg, it was accessibility and empowerment. Would you want to build on that, or do you have your own thoughts?
I actually build both of those together. I think are great ideas, and expanding a little bit about what Eric said with empowerment too, as we talk about Syracuse University and the city of Syracuse, Onondaga County, which we're all in right now, is where we're situated, is another key component to that. And our county executive said a couple words Thursday. And when you bring those kind of 4 different components together, including Microsoft and EGF and the other companies too, it's really some incredible and magical things happen. And so while there's a lot of moving parts, it really becomes fun when you talk about empowering the students and empowering the students of the future even as well, that are learning more about esports, and making sure that it is accessible to everybody. And hopefully, as we talked, Shaz, if this was in person, it would have been a great festival kind of thing. And how do we build and empower and make it more accessible to the community around Syracuse University, as well as other universities universities too. This is certainly a model that we've had a lot of fun building, and I'm sure that it can be transferable and translatable to other areas as well. And how cool if we can build on this and create even more opportunities and experiential learning opportunities for students and the whole esports community too.
Hey, can I follow up on that, what Sarah just said? Because I think one of the interesting things to me is this idea that maybe without even knowing it, these past couple of weeks have really sort of been kind of an interesting proof point about what can be done in the midst of, quarantine. I think it's kind of fascinating that, so many things have been canceled or postponed or, shrunk down or delayed. And to go ahead with this tournament. Obviously it's not exactly the same as way as it was, but it's kind of a cool thing that you can still get it done, in the face of all of this. To me, it's like, just thinking about sort of the history of games in general. It's like, they've always represented a new and different way to be together. Even from like the very first, thinking about the first video game consoles and the quarters, putting quarters in a machine, it was a different way for people to be friends and to play together. And this is, in a way, 40 years later, this is a different way, I think, to do, to be social as well. So I'm kind of excited by this idea that like video games are always like kind of leading the way in in sort of showing people what's possible. And I hope you guys can like figure out a way to capitalize on that. If you think about it, like, video games were like the first computers most people ever encountered, right? So it's, to me, it's like keep pushing on that, keep pushing on, ways to be together, ways to encounter this stuff.
100%. I feel people are building like friendships with people they haven't met yet, and that may be new now. But I think a few years ago, that's kind of old in terms of the gaming world. It was very common just play people online that you don't really know, and over time you get to know them, over time you become friends with them. You may not even know their name. And this was like, I don't know, 10, 12 years ago. And now we're coming to that stage where the rest of society is kind of catching up and like, oh yeah, I don't really need to meet someone in person in order to be their friend. Over time, we can maybe actually become good friends.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think it's also a neat complement too with some of the academic programs having to be online, having this as a complement, a fun way of connecting with other people too. So really kind of immersing us in this whole virtual world, both, the more structured part, but also then the kind of fun part. And just adding one thing on to what Greg was saying, talking to people the past couple of weeks, it's been really exciting to meet some grandparents that want to go and learn esports so they can connect with their grandchildren and things. And in my mind, I'm like, this is a whole nother space of, accessibility and maybe in some of the nursing homes or things, they can start to be able to connect folks more virtually that way too. So, yeah.
Yes. No, that blew my mind away. Yeah, 100% inclusion, right? You don't need to, there's not the certain stereotype of a gamer just doesn't exist, point blank. So the matter of people, and in terms of like what I'm hearing is kind of like envisioning what's next and what's the future like. So on that note, for EGF, like what is next in terms of the tournaments? And I know you probably have a whole year calendar stacked with different things, but are you and Tyler, are you guys sitting there and trying to reinvent or trying new things on the table or trying to play around with this current unfortunate COVID experiences? Are you like, what's next in let's say the next year or two, but then also put on your crazy hat, what's next in the next 15 years?
I think from our perspective, it was kind of interesting, like listening to you guys talk about the interconnectivity and sort of how that's become significantly more common as a result of everything we are. And to me, it kind of felt like a repeat of the cycle of us like back in the early 2000s, where like we were finding each other on like IRC. And those are people that I still talk to. And so to me, it is, as a general trend, I think we're kind of seeing the iterations of that same thing with better technology enablement. And with EGF, the way that we look at it is gaming being sort of this consistent thread through all of that, where if we can continue on the path that we are, continuing to work with people as they are maybe finally interested in having the conversation about esports, how can we support those campuses and make sure that, as they're taking that journey for whatever that means, whether it's competition, education, accessibility, and social impact, even their commercial strategies about, what this could be in the future. It's all about kind of helping them evolve together, because part of this is, the stronger that all the schools are, the stronger the system is as a whole. And so for us, we're obviously wrapping up the Power Series right now. So going over the summer, we've been working with a lot of youth groups with, players that are, like ages 13 to 17. Some of them are going to be going to college next year. And, there's a whole host of possibilities of what's going to happen in the fall. There's a lot of uncertainty around that. So a lot of it's been preparing for that. And then as we get into the fall, we'll have our second official season of the league that we run. That'll start in October. Then we'll have a whole bunch of really cool opportunities around programming, and hopefully lots of the teams that are part of this will continue to be a part of that. And I think in the 15-year window, presumably we'll get back to a spot where we're actually interacting with each other in person again. So I think the events will continue to get bigger. People will see a lot more colleges with a lot more prominent names involved in much bigger ways. And I'm sure that virtual reality and a whole bunch of other things are going to play a significant role in how people are consuming that content and interacting with each other. So this year is all about, getting that foundation laid, making sure those colleges and the institutions that we work with are in a great place to develop in the way that they need to. Then obviously making sure that everything that we're building on the league side is ready to meet that challenge. And I'm sure Eric's got more that he would add to that.
Yeah, if you ask me, I would say everything that Tyler said, and that esport on a college campus will become recognized, understood, and probably the third biggest revenue driver of any athletic group on campus behind college football and college basketball. And that's probably within 5 years. I don't think it takes 15 years.
So I got a journalism question for you then. So like Eric, like journalists love to kind of have fun with the highest paid person on campus. They love to write stories about that. And of course, the football and basketball coaches are almost always paid more than the president, right? So do you think like the esports coach is gonna like rise to that level?
I think the players will punch above their weight on campus in terms of what they're making. The coaching staff, I don't know that you're going to have $8 million like college football coaches in that short amount of time. But I do remember working at ESPN, a situation where we invited Call of Duty to do a tournament at our X Games that we were hosting. And they did a survey of the 20 favorite athletes that were there for X Games, skateboarders, BMX riders, all these different folks. They didn't make any of the top 20. It was all Call of Duty players.
No kidding.
And they were furious. The fact that here they are at the X Games, like once a year they have an opportunity to be able to do something in their sport, and they were drowned out. And that happened 5 years ago. So I do think that this is undeniable that this is already happening. It's just not being perceived by everybody in the world. And this is what we want to do, is make sure that people just open their eyes, look around, and take care of these students in this community. And I think it's going to just go gangbusters.
I mean, do you think that, come August, September this year, that esports is going to be like one of the few fully functional things on most campuses? Or, I mean, there's a way to look at it and almost say like, wait a minute, like this is the reason why certain students are going to show up. I mean, and show up in quotes, obviously, to their fall semester.
I mean, Tyler mentioned it. Like, we're planning for the start of our fall regular season, and we know that it's going to happen no matter what. We hope that it's place-based and it's on campus. But if it's not, and it has to be done from at home, we're ready to go. Like, we already know, and we have that certainty in a way that no other sport has. So, I mean, I'm very involved in the sports business. I've heard all the things that you've read over the last number of days. It's changed every 24 hours. Rumors that the Big Ten's going and starting with their fall programs, then the SEC is responding, and then the Big East is responding, and then you also don't know if any of it's true, right? So those are very difficult questions, And we also don't know, even if the country opens up by the end of the month, what happens in 2 months as a result of that. And is there another shutdown awaiting or not? For us, regardless, we're going to be hosting multiple different developer titles and being able to guarantee that we're going to have an execution of a fall season.
Yeah,
Wow.
absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, it's that drive to continue no matter what happens. Things have to keep going, and the flexibility, I think, that's baked into esports based on, what it is and the infrastructure. One thing I really enjoyed about working with Syracuse University was no matter what crazy or wild idea we throw at them, they would catch it, internalize it, and say, sure, give us 5 minutes, let's regroup a bit, and then here we go. Here's how we envision it, and it's 2 times better than what you suggested. So what I love is, like, Sarah, if you could kind of I know we still need to talk about the future and what it really looks like for the summit and for the future, but in terms of, I guess, esports at Syracuse University, where do you think we're going in the next few years, next 5 years per se, putting on the wild hat and magic wands out, and where do you think, knowing what you know and how we brought this together in such a short amount of time, what do you think the possibilities are for the future?
Well, I'm going to first clarify that I have learned a lot about esports in the past 10 days. First off, I was thrilled to know that I actually am a former gamer with all my years of Oregon Trail, that I've heard that mentioned the past couple of weeks. But I think it's very similar to what the others were saying. It's one of growth. In our new Barnes Center, which is where our student athletics and the wellness center is on campus, there's an incredible new esports room that I know Scott can talk more in detail about. Just incredible equipment and setup, and just that recognition and knowing that the use that space gets now, and then hopefully doing things like this will also increase, awareness and understanding too, and parallel to actually playing the esports, but knowing the business behind it, and that there is everything from, the journalism, the economics, the tech. You still need your hardcore tech engineers, and as well as your information science and data analyst students, as well as the journalisms and the business students. So it's a really, I think, a neat match for something to be a part of a university, because everybody can be a part of it, whether they're playing or understanding the industry behind it as well. And certainly, again, as I mentioned, throwing the great collaboration with Microsoft and the city and county in there, really the future, I think, is one of growth, and being able to have these parties come together and determine a way of incorporating even more events like this. So hopefully when the dome's through, we can have you guys all there, and I can't reserve it, but would just love to have a big tournament there.
That would be great. And in the future, Scott, what do you think, what are some of in terms of your future and where you want to go in your career, how does esports help you? What are some of the skill sets you're gaining from esports? Either it could be just helping you be better as a student, but also I would assume it's a way to take your mind off stuff and also kind of reset and think about other things rather than intense stuff in biology and chemistry.
Definitely. Esports and video games in general have always just been like a thing I can do on the side to relax, unwind, for sure. And now it's allowing me to still be competitive and still, even though I'm done with normal sports, being able to be competitive and have, competitions and stuff to do, which is amazing. And also I think esports, one of the main things that I think I'm really getting from esports is a lot of these collegiate tourneys, span over hours and hours and hours, being able to stay focused and whatnot, being able to, is one of the key things that I think that a lot of these tournaments have, that people get worn out throughout the day and stuff, and being able to stay focused. And then for esports in general, I've helped to bring up esports at Syracuse University and help it grow, as it just recently started like a year ago, our club. And I want it to be sustainable. I want it to keep going once I'm gone. Once all the other people who helped found this and all the other wonderful people who have helped start this, being able to have the next generation of college students to continue, and with all the help from Syracuse University, that hopefully keeps on, going. We can have a great growing program.
Very interesting. This reminds me of a panel we had earlier on about careers and how it seems like that esports club that you created basically gave you time management skills. It gave you communication skills, gave you an opportunity to manage a team that maybe you don't get in your daily job while you're working. at your level. So it seems like a really good way to almost fill out those soft skills, quote unquote, that are so critical. I know Katie couldn't join us today for some previous engagements, but our other moderator as well wanted us to highlight the need to network, and not just network for the sake of networking, but having the skill set to go out there digitally and make friends and make a network that's actionable, trying to help them get somewhere, but then also help, along the way, of course, they'll return the favor and help you out. So it feels like, correct me if I'm wrong, but it feels like a good way to increase your quality of network at the university while you're going through it. In a way, it exposes you to new departments, perhaps, or new, like if I was majoring in economics, but if I did esports, I would assume I'll get more exposed to other departments, students from different fields I would never have had a chance to even talk to.
Yeah, definitely. I think that I've managed to make connections with people who I don't think without esports I would have ever talked to. I remember being younger, making a really great friend who I still have a relationship with them just through online. It's wonderful. It's wonderful the way networking and esports seem to coincide.
Very interesting. Fascinating. I think we're all going to sign up for an esports program at Syracuse University pretty soon and jump back into it. I mean, I guess in terms of like going back to the terms of the inclusion aspect of it, I think what's interesting is there is, like, in this gaming world, there's definitely some room to improve upon. Like there's definitely, some unfortunate cyberbullying going on always, regardless of esports, but it still happens, whether it's Mixer or Twitch or whatever platform you're using. There is a sense of people, online bullying and things like that. But I wonder if esports can play a small role in being part of that change, perhaps, and part of bringing people together once you begin playing with them. In a way, it almost humanizes people because you're playing with them, you're building teams together. So I guess how does EGF deal with any type of scenarios like that in terms of cyberbullying, or I'm not sure if it happened or not, but I guess, like, how do you, because the cyber world it's a wild west out there. So then how is EGF bringing some keeping it fun, but also bringing some, rules of conduct into the flight? I'd love to know more about that, because I'm sure people at home are thinking of building their own digital communities, but they may not be thinking about how to make guidelines, how to make sure people are acting like humans and not hiding behind their avatars and just attacking people, unfortunately.
We built our system largely based off the experience that I had when I was working for Res Life when I was still at RIT, where the medium of communication is different, but the fundamentals of that setup are pretty similar. So for us, we work, with players that, like I said, are age 13 to 23 or 24 usually. And all of them have slightly different ways that they interact with one another and ultimately with the system. But consistently across, what we found was when we set expectations, when you first come into a community, very straightforwardly, like whether it's Discord and you get to see immediately what are your expectations when you come into the server, consistent reinforcement from the staff that are a part of those communities. People tend to respond really well to that because no one wants a toxic environment. And the people that are trying to be those agents of chaos are usually pretty easy to root out and deal with. And so it's a combination of setting really straightforward and very clear expectations up front immediately, making sure that your staff is consistently exhibiting those behaviors and acting as role models. And then, promoting the positive behavior and then, making sure that you're dealing with the negative side of that as quickly and effectively as possible, which for some of it, it's sometimes people don't even realize that they're being super toxic. So when you talk to them and say, hey, this is why that's not okay, that behavior changes immediately. And I think that we've been particularly fortunate that if you just look at our Discord communities, for example, you have some good spirited ribbing and trash talking, which is, kind of part of the fun. But everyone, for the most part, is really respectful about how they go about that. And overall, they're really positive. So maybe we're just in this super weird bubble, or maybe we're like super community people. I'm not really sure. But we've been really happy to see that the students and the players that are a part of that take it really seriously, and they're ultimately the ones that make it all possible.
Good. That's great to hear. Fantastic. Greg, in terms of, you mentioned that you learned so much about esports in the last 10 days, and it's been mind-blowing. What made you say yes when we approached you and say, hey, do you want to take this massive challenge on and be, wield the power and talk to dozens of people suddenly without proper notice? Like, what helped you say yes?
Well, basically, I think the short answer is I misunderstood what I was getting into. But that's all water under the bridge, No,
Because Shaz is persuasive. That's why.
Yeah, Shaz is
Yeah.
That's right. What is that line? You had me at Shaz, right? No, I mean, I guess to me, the thing that was interesting to me, the thing that I wanted to sort of be a part of was where, I mean, from my point of view, Games for Change has always been this interesting organization that in a way kind of stands apart from a lot of the gaming infrastructure, if you will. It's always, to me, it's as somebody who doesn't actually cover the gaming industry, I've been able to sort of stand outside it. And what I've always loved about Games for Change is that, as the gaming industry keeps changing, and keeps getting sort of more advanced and more, its focus goes from one kind of game to another, and obviously it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Games for Change, in a way, just kind of like keeps on trucking in a very similar way. It's very focused on, the social aspect of gaming. It's very focused on, as they say, serious games, which a term I've always thought is really fascinating. And so within that, I was really intrigued to think, well, okay, so how can something like esports, which seems like the most unserious thing in the world, be part of this organization or be associated with this organization that is all about serious games? And obviously, I think everything we've been talking about is kind of addressing that. But 10 days ago, I didn't have much of an idea about that.
And I think that's the power of esports, right? You learn so much, and I think it was critical to the important role that Games for Change played in this entire summit can't be highlighted more. I mean, they really brought together these subject matter experts, and they helped us strung together a narrative that really showed potential of esports for tomorrow. And I'm really confident that a lot of parents at home that are listening as byproducts, I'm sure the gamers are watching the summit, and their parents are listening because we're all in the same room basically, and they're probably learning a lot. Like, oh, interesting. Maybe I shouldn't discourage my maybe I shouldn't tell my version of Scott to say focus on biochemistry, stop playing games. But in reality, games actually helps you reinforce and build a better career trajectory overarchingly. So very interesting. You also mentioned your book. Could you maybe just tell us a bit more about it? It was a really fascinating subject matter. I really kind of wanted us to jump into it a bit.
A chance to hold it up again. Just briefly. No, I appreciate it. And I'll just very kind of briefly talk about it. So this was a book that I wrote, came out in 2015, and it was really just me sort of scratching this itch, wanting to go down this rabbit hole of how are games and learning intersecting with one another? How are teachers seeing the power of video games? And it was actually something that I wasn't really planning on doing. I wanted to write a book about what was happening to reading in America. I was fascinated with this question of, are young people reading books the way they used to? And what it quickly turned into was an exploration of young people's media habits. And when that kind of hit me in the head, like, okay, I need to write about young people and their media habits, the first thing that entered into the discussion was, I have to do something about video games. I don't know what they're about. I don't know why they're so important. But every time I try to get away, they kind of drag me back. And so it was actually just me sort of saying, okay, I'm just going to spend a couple of weeks here, maybe a couple of months, finding out about video games. I'm not going to really, I'm not going to spend too much time on this. I just want to kind of satisfy myself that I'm doing sort of due diligence. And, that was, as they say, that was the end of that. Because, every person I met introduced me to 3 or 4 more people who were doing something. And the next thing I knew, I was at E3 and I was like, okay, this is a very, very big place. And a very big chunk of the teachers I met were very, very passionate about games. So that's sort of how it all took shape. And I ended up, meeting a ton of people who were doing the most fascinating things in education that I'd ever seen. And education is, it's like a field where good ideas go to die, so.
That's interesting you say that. I'm very involved in education as well. And the thing you bring up about books versus video games, just as one example, I think the way the human mind is working now with younger generations and the way it needs to work for the next few decades and next generations is just radically different than how it was for us.
Yeah.
So I do think, and by the way, my career, and I've had a wonderful career as an executive in sports and across sports. I absolutely tie it to the gaming culture that I grew up with. And I grew up from age 10 trying to code games to be able to do so. Learning cognitive skills, learning problem solving skills, learning how to be a team member, learning what leadership looked like. All of these things came out of my version of gaming, even though I see Tyler on my screen right now. I would never call myself a gamer anymore because I'm, right here. But
gamers are agents, timeless.
But there's never been a question in my mind that is what led to be able to react quickly, make decisions, turn on that decision, and then execute what that is. And those are all things that lead to success in career. So, and I just think that even the way that I teach and the educational stuff that I do, I try to not think about it like in the way that I was taught, because I think we're just in a different era.
Yeah, no, I think you're right.
100%, absolutely. I mean, just reflecting on the last 10 days and everything everyone said here, universities and the different components, like universities working with the county, working with the city, all bringing together, professionals like Sarah, they're able to weave together this complex narrative, make sure that all the moving parts are in place to ensure that we're creating as many opportunities for students and non-students to have experiential learning and to really bring things to life and to help them not just, read a book and memorize it and just regurgitate it on some exam.
That's right.
But to actually bring that real life experience into it. And in return, it helps universities sell their brand, right? It helps, I'm sure it helps Syracuse University in a big way, that you're cutting edge. We're giving your students, your children, a chance to really blossom and grow and become well-rounded individuals. And folks like Games for Change and Greenlit Productions and kind of all these different people, it's the sports and it's the esports and it's the gaming aspect that kind of brought us all together and kind of made this cohesive thread that it's not about, beating someone and being number one or being some wild shoutcaster or some cool ninja, but it's kind of living a holistic life where I feel that esports allows us to amplify what makes us human rather than the common, easy, and sometimes lazy narrative that playing video games dehumanizes you or something, or you become that person we see in those movies that are just scratching their belly and playing weird games and stuff like that. That couldn't be further from the truth. And I think the last 10 days and the Virtual Industry Pros Summit combined with the EGF tournament kind of shows what can be done even in a time of crisis like COVID, that we can bring together over 300,000 viewers from all across the world to kind of come together and learn about esports and the value of just being human and coming together and growing and investing in our careers. So on that note, any final words from anyone, feel free to jump in. But I think this has been a fascinating experience and so much more to come. So get ready. I'm not getting, I don't want to get in trouble. I'm not getting commitments or anything, but I have a feeling, an inkling that this was not the last one, but the first one to many more in the future, to be bigger and better and even more inclusive. So thank you all so much for your hard work and your energy and your time. And thank you again for HyperX Inc. And you check the link in the below and for the sponsorship. And thank you, the viewer, for spending time with us. And I hope whoever else is watching next to you, hopefully the volume wasn't too loud for you and you also learned a bit as well. Some experiential learning, some residual IQ increases all around. But stay tuned for much more. On behalf of Microsoft and everyone else, thank you so much for taking part, and see you soon.